Hello, good day and assalamu alaikum. For this video, I will be discussing to you the women human rights in international level. So if you have remembered, for Hannah Gano, I have discussed to you the women rights in the Philippines and those conventions that recognize the rights of every woman. So before anything else before we delve into our formal discussion, the focus of my topic today is regarding on women rights instruments. So diba na-discuss naman yung mga women human rights instruments natin sa Philippines, but in my part, we will be talking about the instruments for women, or human rights instruments for women in the international level. Okay, so the first instrument that we have here is the Security Council 1325 resolution on 2000. So this resolution is a comprehensive resolution on women, peace, and security. And this stresses the need to address gender issues in all peacekeeping or peace building and peacekeeping efforts, and to include women in the key institution and decision-making bodies committed to building and maintenance of peace. So Security Council 1325 focuses on integrating gender perspectives in peace building, in peacekeeping, and decision-making process. So, di ba, during civil war, mga ganyan dati is women are excluded for negotiation. So, especially in decision-making process. So, this resolution 1325 invoked to advocate for the inclusion of women to talk about peace talks and construction of efforts. Second instrument that we have here is the Geneva Convention in 1949 and additional protocols in 1977. So the Geneva Conventions are founded on the idea of respect for individuals and their dignity. Persons not directly taking part in hostilities and those put out of the action through sickness, injury, captivity, or any other causes must be respected and protected against the effects of war. Those who suffers must be aided without discrimination. And further, Geneva Convention emphasize respect for individuals, protecting civilians and those not partaking in hostilities during the war. So Geneva Convention 1949 really provided a legal grounds to demand the protection of non-combatants and humanitarian aid for victims. So, diba, during war, women are most likely to be affected during the conflict, and so the Geneva Convention 1949 provided a legal grounds for the protection not only for women but those combatants that are not partaking in any hostilities. So the next instrument that we have here is the Convention for the Suppression of the Traffic in Persons and of the Exploitation of the Prostitution of Others, 1951. So parties that signed this convention agree to punish any persons who, to gratify the passions of another, procures, entices, or leads away for the purpose of prostitution another person even with the consent of that person. Second, exploits the prostitution of another person even with the consent of that person. In addition, the state's parties promise to punish any person who keeps or manages or knowingly finances or takes part in the financing of a brothel, and anyone who knowingly lets or rents a building or other place for the purpose of the prostitution of others. So this instrument, it criminalizes human trafficking and exploitation, including managing brothels. So this transnational trafficking actually rings forces for women in prostitution. So authorities can use this convention to prosecute those responsible and collaborate internationally to dismantle the network. So diba, when we talk about human trafficking, ang pinaka-prone na may issue ng mga ganito is mga kababaihan. So, if you could remember regarding the issues of feminism in the international relations, is parang isa sa pinaka-neglect daw na issue ng mga international relation scholars natin is yung human trafficking, which we know that this disproportionately affect women. So, because of the sex slavery or prostitution, or di kaya to be more like maingat sa salita natin is yung human trafficking. This instrument provided grounds, or yes, legal grounds to criminalize those individuals that who will finance, partake in the prostitution of another person. Another instrument is the Declaration on the Protection of Women and Children in Emergencies and Armed Conflict that was established in 1974. This prohibits attacks and bombing on the civilian population, inflicting suffering especially on women and children who are recognized as part or most of the vulnerable members of the population. Article 2. Moreover, it recognizes all forms of repressions as criminal act, including cruel and inhuman treatment of women and children, imprisonment, torture, shootings, mass arrests, collective punishment, destruction of dwellings, and forcible eviction, Article number 5. So, this instrument, as I've said earlier, this prohibits attacks on civilians, especially women and children in particular, and it seems repression as criminal, and it seems or deems repression as criminal acts. For instance, in a conflict zone, children and women face mass arrests and destruction of their homes. This instrument, this declares, this can be used to call out such acts as crimes under international law. So, in the case of Palestine and Israel conflict, this instrument may not be that effective, but what we are talking about here is its function, not on its application on the issue of Palestine and Israel. As we have or as we all know that most of our international conventions right now is not being utilized to prevent issues like genocides happening in Palestine and Israel conflict. So the next instrument is what we call CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women in 1979. So this convention was entered in force in 1981, which guarantees women equal rights with men in many spheres of life, including education, employment, healthcare, political participation, nationality, and marriage. This convention also affords women protection from abuses from which men are largely already protected. However, it does not specifically protect women against rape, spousal abuse, or other abuses suffered mainly by women. So, why this convention are included in the Human Women Rights Instrument? This is included in those instruments because these conventions emphasize the rights of women or equal access by women in education, in healthcare, and other social services that we have in the government or in the international government. However, this convention lacks specific protection against gender-based violence, such as what I have mentioned earlier, the protection against rape, spousal abuse, and other abuses suffered mainly by women. However, for instance, if a country laws restrict women from owning property or working in a certain sectors, CEDAW or this convention can be cited to pressure the government to reform discriminatory law. Another instrument that we have here is the Vienna Declaration in 1993. So this declaration recognizes that the human rights of women and of girls, of children are an inalienable part of universal human rights and calls for the elimination of gender-based violence. It recognizes the importance of joint efforts to eliminate violence against women in public and private life, and confirms that the violation of women's human rights in armed conflict situation. So, this instrument recognizes women's rights as universal human rights, addressing gender-based violence. So, kanina we talk about the CEDAW, and though it emphasizes some of the rights of women in many social services, but it lacks protection specifically on the gender-based violence. And in this convention, in the Vienna Declaration, it emphasized the women's rights as universal rights, which address gender-based violence. So they might have quite similarities, but also have distinct differences as they differ from how they recognize the rights of women that address gender-based violence. Another convention or instrument here is the Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which established in 1993, asserts that the violence against women is pervasive in all societies across lines of income, class, and culture, and it recognizes that the violence against women by private actor is a human rights violence. The declaration reaffirmed that violence against women is the manifestation of historically unequal power relations between men and women, and that it is one of the critical mechanisms by which women are forced into a subordinate status. So, Declaration on Elimination on Violence Against Women instrument highlights the violence as a human rights violation due to unequal power relation. For instance, in a community, women face high rates of honor killings and private violence. This practice can violate women's human rights and must be addressed. We also have Beijing Platform for Action in 1995. This platform identifies violence against women as an obstacle to the achievement of the objective of equality, development, and peace. It includes a focus on combating violence against women as one of its strategic objectives and on promoting the status of women in war-affected countries. So, in this instrument, this Beijing Platform for Action identifies violence against women as a barrier to equality, development, and peace. For instance, in a certain scenario, post-conflict rebuilding efforts exclude measures to support women affected by wartime violence. This platform can be a guide to policies to include women protection and empowerment in a reconstruction. So another instrument is what we call the ILO Convention 100 or Equal Remuneration 1951. So this instrument states which have ratified C100 agree to promote the principle of equal pay for work of equal value. They must ensure its application to all workers in a manner consistent with the national methods used to determine rates of pay. The convention defines equal pay for work of equal value as a rate of pay fixed without discrimination based on sex. So, in this instrument, this advocates for equal pay for equal work without gender discrimination. For instance, women in a company are paid less than men for the same job. This convention can be cited in labor disputes to demand wage parity for women. So now here we are at the last instrument that we have in women rights instrument in the international level. So we have the Convention on Political Rights of Women, which is established in 1952. The main objectives of this convention is to implement the principle of equality of rights for men and women in the enjoyment and exercise of political rights. The convention formulates important principles providing that women without any discrimination shall be A. entitled to vote in all elections, B. eligible for election to all publicly elected bodies established by national law, and C, entitled to hold office or public office and exercise all public functions established by national law. So, in this convention, meaning this ensures women's rights to vote, hold office, and participate in public functions equally. For instance, women in a country are barred from voting or holding a office. This convention on political rights of women can be provided as a basis to demand reform ensuring equal political rights for all genders, particularly of the women's rights to participate in the election or to hold a public office. Thank you.